Azeroth review, which is hopefully working. As always, if people can say hello, then I will sort of know that it is working. Turn the sound off there. A bit of an announcement, first of all. This will come as no surprise to people who've been watching on the community tab there. From next week, I'm going to be streaming this on YouTube directly. Now, I'm not abandoning Twitch as such. I'll still put gameplay on there. The whole reason I started streaming on Twitch at all, because YouTube would have been a much more natural place to stream, is simply because there's a lot of things you would do while playing a game that YouTube wouldn't be very happy about, for all their efforts to try and get people to stream gaming on YouTube. There's an awful lot more restrictions, and of course you can potentially sully the good name of your channel with certain activities on there. But you know, the discussions like this, I see no reason, after having done I don't know how many now, I see no reason why that couldn't be done on YouTube. And it's just going to be, I think, easier, because just for notification purposes, like I asked a question in the community, and there were several people who were saying that they don't use Twitch at all. But just in general, there's only so many people. I mean, it's simple maths. I have 2,724 people following me on Twitch, and I have about 15,700 on YouTube. So there's a much higher chance of notifications, things like that, to get more people involved. So, other things, just as we get the ball rolling, I have just I've noticed that they have brought out the next comic, pre-expansion little comic, which is on Magni. Unlike the Jaina one, this one seemed to be largely gibberish. I imagine it's going to have some meaning. They're trying to sort of link, his perceived failure with Moira with Azeroth, but I didn't enjoy it as much, I have to say. Rip TB. What's TB in this context? Hi, Valisha and Augie. TB to me is tuberculosis. I don't think you mean that. That's been... Oh, sorry, yes, Total Biscuit. Right, yes. Yes, I noticed some people... it's a bit of a strange one for me. I didn't really comment on that one myself, because although very famous, in fact, you could hardly imagine someone more famous in terms of World of Warcraft commentating. Maybe Boogie, in terms of ones who've done a lot of World of Warcraft stuff. I think Total Biscuit did much more earlier on before he diverged. But it's one of those I didn't really watch myself. I watched a few videos; they were all right. I didn't look at them and go, "Oh no, that's terrible." But it wasn't my sort of thing to follow. So he's not really someone who's inspired me at all. But I know that obviously there are some who have. And yet again, it's another one from the community. He's gone very young to cancer again. So yes, and there's actually been a little bit of unpleasantness, I think, as well on social media. I don't really know why people can't listen to their mothers who tell them if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, really. But there you go. There we are. Shall we... what sort of things are we going to be discussing today? We've got, obviously... I've been having to explore the forums today and yesterday. That's been pretty grim. What line is bullshit? Just started reading Method's Reddit post from some weeks back. Make Warcraft great again. I've not seen that. No, there's never a reason to not be nice. The threat changes. There's no serious threat changes. They're just reducing the amount of threat tanks generate. But at the moment, tanks generate a ridiculous amount of threat. It's actually it's been a problem for me as well. For example, Mythic Coven of Shivara. Is that the right word? Have I actually got it right? I never actually say the rest of it. I always just say Coven. But, well, they are Shivara, so I guess so. So the way we do that now, evening, Kaz, is unlike when we're doing it on progress, we now do it in a situation where, because a lot of people did this, I sort of called for us to do this in the first place. Basically, a melee tanks one of the bosses. So a tank grabs it for me so that no one else rips threat of it, plants it, and then I, taunt it, and hopefully it stays on me. But every now and then, it goes onto the tank over there, who, Guardian Druid, who does a bit of a sneaky swipe or something like that, or thrash or whatever. Something, in other words, and it instantly rips that threat off me. So tanks at the moment do too much threat. It's not like this change is going to go back to the days of vanilla and TBC, where DPS had to moderate their own threat. It's not going to do that. It's still going to be pretty straightforward. It's just that, it's now, yes, wait for 5 Sunders. My first experience of large-scale raiding, going into Molten Core, and the very first giants. I think they were both giants rather than, because some of them were giants, some were destroyers. I think they were both molten giants, but I can't remember. And you were basically told you're not touching them. You don't even put dots on. Not that I had really many dots. Nothing to worry about anyway. Until 5 Sunders. Or sometimes, eventually it went down to 3 Sunders. You could do it after 3 Sunders. But yeah, you had to watch the stacks going up. And then, right, we can go now. But yeah, I don't see what the issue is at all. Not even for AoE. I saw someone on Twitter going, oh, maybe a problem for AoE. No, it's not. No, it's not a problem. I mean, okay, if a tank, has something as its target and it's just passively holding threat on something else, and a DPS absolutely nukes the hell out of something that's not the tank's primary target. But why would you do that? You sort of agree a general order of killing things anyway, but that's the only situation in which you'd pull threat off with this thing, and that's just bad play. So as long as you haven't got bad play at work, it's not an issue. So yeah, they're never going to go back to that vanilla TBC because, they're, as I say, DPS. I mean, that's where, apportioning blame got very complicated. Well, it depends. If the tank was a raid leader, as they often were, it wasn't very complicated at all. It was everyone else's fault. So if they lost aggro, or it's never it's one of those things where, in theory, it could be the tank's fault for not generating enough threat, or it could be the DPS fault for generating too much threat, not holding on to their DPS. So whenever it happened, the tanks just instantly said, oh, no, it's their fault. Same with healing. If they ever died, it was the healer's fault. But because you can never definitely pin something on the tank without going over logs. But yeah, it's a non-issue. It's a complete non-issue. As I say, I think it's a pain. All right, it's niche situations where you require a DPS to tank something. But where you do, you don't want a nearby tank doing some passive AoE ability and ripping it off you when you've once you've had it for a bit, then okay, it's going to stay on you. But, in those early few seconds, because we lose all the benefit of having a melee tank one of the bosses if it just gets pulled off. As I say, every now and then we have a pull where it does. And that wouldn't happen at all with this change. I think it's a good change. Making threat matter needs to happen. It's never going to happen. Threat's never going to be a realistic issue. The only thing to be aware of is if there's like a threat reset with a knockback, say. Tank gets knocked back. And usually in that situation, of course, you have a second tank ready to instantly grab it. But maybe people need to be a bit aware of that. But yeah, it was... the idea of DPS not being able to go all out. And you inevitably had a bit of an issue as well in terms of some DPS maybe had better threat management than others, which meant... Because that's what you were limited by, in terms of your DPS. You weren't limited by your abilities. You were limited by how well you could manage your threat. Hi, Higpig. And often, some classes, I say, had better management of that than others. Hunters were laughing. Absolutely laughing. Just feign death every now and then. Would always boil down to having DPS required to wait to do things. Yeah, the worst one we ever had, don't know whether people remember or are aware, In Blackwing Lair, I suppose you would have done if you've done transmog runs in there. The third boss, that like humanoid draconid thing, can't remember its name now. So what we used to have to do for that, just to play it completely safe, because it was an arsehole to get to, because you've got all those suppression fields and whelps to deal with to get to it. The last thing you wanted to do on that boss was wipe. And it was a very easy boss, so we used to play it super safe. So what we would do, because there was a knockback on that as well, such where you needed the tanks all jammed into the wall, ready to tank swap as well at certain points. So what we did to make sure no one ripped threat off it, which would be a complete disaster, is all the casters had to wand it for a bit. And when I say a bit, I mean until basically about a third of its health was gone. So hunters were okay because they could keep feign death. They could just cycle that. Broodlord, yes, thank you. So yeah, we just had everyone just wanding it for a third of the bloody health of it. I was going to say a third of the fight, but it was probably more like half the fight. Because as soon as that was it, then you could, once all the tanks had a reasonable amount of threat on it, then they were allowed to sort of up it a bit and actually use spells. Actually use some of their spells. Oh dear. You got a 960 trinket in the cache. Is it any good though? It depends. They're usually rubbish. I've not even really bothered. If I've literally with Mythic Plus now, if I happen to be on and someone says, does anyone want to do Mythic Plus? I'll say yes. And if not, I'll worry about it. I keep missing, for example, in Discord, someone saying, oh, does anyone want to do a Mythic Plus? But by the time I see it, it's all just gone. I'm not desperate. A subject totally different is wondering, me being a teacher, how do I think youth language evolution is evolving? Language evolves fairly rapidly anyway. Obviously, it can potentially... I don't think it's necessarily even the internet that's increased the rate of language change. I think it's just more internationalism. I think television has done more than the internet to do that. Just, watching other things from different cultures. I mean, the internet has sort of done something. Hi, Skeletor. But I can still understand my students. It can't be running at a very rapid pace, can it? I can still understand the youth of today. They don't use any... Occasionally, they will talk about a person that I'm not aware of, a celebrity, because I don't watch telly. But I can't remember them ever using a word that I'm not familiar with. But anyway, there you go. In France, obviously, yeah, it's very different in France because, there was a thing in the news about France this week. I don't mean the guy climbing up the thing. It was something else. It's to do with what to call a particular type of food, which is very serious business in France, because if there's two things the French really get very uptight about, one, it's what to call things, because they're very iffy about... I say there may be some French people in the audience. If so, hello. Bonsoir. But very, very iffy about what to call things. They don't like foreign words creeping into general usage in the language. And obviously too, food. So a decision about what to call a particular food is obviously going to be a national debate. No sign of the legendary tab in the BFA beta. No, I am... And they don't answer. I've tweeted them a couple of times at least. And, when they've been getting ready for the Q&As. Hi, guys. And no, I'm not. There's nothing. No one's saying anything about it. I be honest, I don't think we're getting one. At this point, they could do it. I don't really think it would be that much effort. And do you know something as well? Do you know what I bet is the reason they're not going to do it? Because some arsehole will have looked at it and go, but if we do that, then let's say me, for example. So obviously I have all of my Paladin legendaries. Now, some of those legendaries are cross-class. So some of them, for example, like the plate boots, Agrimar's Stride, that can be used on any plate character, so that would make it available for my warrior and my DK. Something like Ceph as a Secret or Pride would be useful on every character. And probably some tit has gone, but then that'd allow other characters to be able to use it. That's just completely broken. I'm not saying they have, they would have said that, because that's just mindless for 1 month when it's getting ready for the next expansion. That's all it'd be useful for. But do you know what? I bet that someone would actually have an objection on that. But I don't, I mean, there's obviously some things in my bank I could get rid of, but it's still going to mean having a full bank. My void storage is full, and my void storage only has things in there that I don't want to throw away. I'm not throwing away, I don't care. Things you can't get anymore, basically. So that's not happening. So, yes, I'm going to have to delete some things from the bank. Sure enough, there is some stuff there that I probably don't really need anymore. But and obviously, as soon as we get to that point where we're really gearing up for BFA, there's a load of stuff in my bags that like all the stuff I have for different sets of gear. I'm not going to need that. I'm not going to need that when I'm leveling, because I'm going to be getting to level 116-ish anyway, fairly rapidly, at which point it's all going to be, quest rewards are going to be equal or better than it anyway. So I could probably essentially empty the bags. I'd also have to get rid of all the reagents, so I can clear some aspects of my storage out. But yeah, I don't like the idea that my bank is going to be clogged full of those legendaries. You would like it if void storage could be used with the equipment sets. Gear in void storage can still be equipped when you swap around preset equip sets. It's a tricky one, because effectively, I wasn't really there. I don't think, because I still hadn't returned to the game, I think, or maybe it was roundabout when void storage was going in, so I don't really know what Blizzard said about it. But if you think about the concept of void storage, it's supposed to be like, in the void, I guess. So it's out of reach unless you extract it again. So from that point of view, from a role-playing point of view, it doesn't make any sense. But I don't know why it was ever put in. Was it put in simply because, we've been told all sorts of tales about, they've not been able to increase the main backpack up until now, just because they didn't want to muck about with the code and break everything. Is there a similar thing with banks? Because we've never had an upgrade for banks. We've never had an increase in the number of bank slots. The only way to increase the capacity in your bank is to get bigger bags. So, was it done because they couldn't do anything with the bank? So they basically created another bank, but had to have some gimmick with it. But either way, yeah, they'll sort of argue that you can't really do anything with that. What do I think of the tank aggro redesign? So I was just talking about that first thing, actually. It makes no realistic difference. In fact, it makes things better. It's, if a tank can't do more than a quarter of the DPS of a DPS, what? So it's no issue at all. I mean, that would be like the equivalent for the threat to fail. That'd be like the equivalent now in terms of today's money of a mythic raiding tank not even being able to break 500k DPS. Let's have a look. What do tanks do? Because I don't really pay any attention to them. Let's just look at some logs here. Epics have been devalued. There's no point in epics anymore. You get epics as quest rewards, for goodness sake. You can do your first quest in Battle for Azeroth and get a reward, and it upgrades to epic. You've got an epic reward, which you instantly disenchant or vend or something like that, because, who the hell needs an epic that's lower item level than the ones you've got? I don't know why they bother with gear colours anymore. I know Blizzard have their thing about, for the same item level, more stats on the better. Bullshit. Just have item level. At this point, it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. Right, I'm going to have a look at how much. What boss should I pick? Let's do Varimathras. Yeah, enchanting mats indeed. So that's what I would do with it, but not everyone is an enchanter. Look at this. So on Varimathras, our weaker tank, the one that did the least damage, by that I mean, did 900k DPS. Right, that's the lowest damage tank. Well, I say look at it, you can't look at it, I'm looking at it. 917k DPS. Our top DPS did 2.7 million. So, you know, that's that's way over a quarter. It's absolute nonsense. Everyone's making a big deal out of it. Frankly, it's just because the current ratio, the current scaling of tank threat was beyond ridiculous. You know, all a tank had to do was fart and everything's on them. You know, it's not going to take any more skill from tanks. All it means is, like I say, on Coven where I have to tank something, I can tank as a DPS a mob and not have the tank next to me sneeze and pull it off me. That's all it means. Quite what their reason for doing it is, I don't know. But this is certainly not going to be something I'm going to be criticising because it's a complete non-issue. I really can't imagine anyone even talking about it. High tank rank for single target, something like 1.1 million. Well, is it? Let's have a look. Oh, yeah, I suppose. So our Brewmaster on the same fight did 1.3 million. And they got 95th percentile on damage. So, you know, there it is. So, yeah, that's what I mean. It's no problem at all. No issue. Unless I mean, obviously, we don't know how tuning's gone. Maybe they want to reduce the relative amount of damage that tanks do with it. But I really doubt it. Cannot think of that at all. You've pulled more threat than a pug tank into a Sargeras. Yeah, but that's because you'll outgear them. That's a different thing. We're talking about people in a team, you know, who should be roughly as well geared as each other. Obviously, if you go around, if you've got, what are we on now? 970 item level, and some poor 850 item level tank's going to try and, obviously you're going to have trouble. But for groups that are, you know, in there on common purpose and therefore should be roughly, you know, within a certain level of each other, not a problem. Speaking of enchanting mats, the trinket is a 4% loss, even in best case. Oh, yeah, no. Tank aggro stuff won't change anything in raiding. I don't see it in Mythic Plus. I don't really see what issue there's going to be in Mythic Plus either. Skittish is always potentially dangerous. Skittish doesn't... This doesn't make skittish more difficult. You still need to focus certain targets down. Just focus the right bloody targets, not a problem. I haven't seen a sign of the Dark Moon trinkets, but I don't on a super regular basis at the moment check what Wowhead have been downloading. So I can't swear to it. You've already pulled aggro. Are you kidding me? You've pulled aggro. That's embarrassing. I am a god-awful tank. I've probably tanked about 5 times as a protection paladin in the whole of Legion. No one's... If I decide to tank something, no one's going to pull aggro off me as a prop paladin. And I don't know what I'm doing. Well, I'm not at DPS as a prop paladin, I suppose. That's appalling. There's no helping them if they can't hold threat. It doesn't matter if you've just popped wings. People do pop wings. People pop their DPS cooldowns at the start. There was a time when... I'm not even talking about the 3 Sunders thing. You know, there was still a time when before you started DPS, you made sure the tank had it. Now you don't. As soon as you see that boss move, in. I just assume the tank's got it. The tank's got it. They're going to have it. I cannot imagine how you can mess up and lose aggro to a DPS as a tank. You know, at the start, when you expect they've fired off their pre-pot, they have, as soon as that countdown's gone to 0, and you know, in my case as a melee, I mean, a caster's got to pre-cast, fair enough. But as a melee, I can afford to wait till the boss actually moves. As soon as I see it even twitch, you know, that's it. I'm firing off an ability. My wings is being popped very quickly. I'm going to be, you know, my damage, okay, has to ramp up a bit. But everyone else is straight into it. Never seen, and I've seen a couple of bad tanks this expansion. Never had that issue. But skittish is just skittish anyway. You blame Greater Judgment. Well, Greater Judgment's going to be disappearing soon, so that'll be fine, won't it? We got any explanation? What was that boom in my latest video? No idea. And it was a boom. Like, when I played it back, it didn't... it just sounded like... It could easily have been, when you listen to the sound from here, as if it was just like a door being slammed or something. It was just a nondescript bang. But it was an actual explosion. But I don't know what from. I have no idea. Because the microphone here, it's sort of directional. So it should... I mean, it doesn't absolutely cut out sound anywhere else because it can reflect off behind me and back into it. But it does reduce the volume considerably of any sounds coming from that direction. So the fact that it was fairly loud on the video as well, it was bloody loud for me. So it was that's the only way I can describe it. It was an explosion. I looked out the window, I couldn't see anything, but a few minutes later I smelled smoke. Now I think because the smoke carried on for some time, I think that was just a neighbour burning some garden refuse or something. But at the same time, I don't know what it was. I have no clue what it was at all. You know, I couldn't see any sign of anything. So yeah, we've got a bomb maker in the local neighbourhood. I can't know. Anyway, so no, I don't know what it was. I still don't know what it was. It wasn't in the news, so I'm guessing it wasn't actually a bomb. But because you know, in this country, when something like that happens, it is in the news. It's not an everyday occurrence. Oh no, that's shootings, isn't it? Anyway, what were we talking about? Fuel canister. Wouldn't that have done some serious damage if a fuel canister went like that? But yeah, completely knackered my train of thought at that point. But it doesn't. I think I'd largely done anyway. Well, I suppose it would be. The main, I mean, the only time, I mean, if it were bonfire night, I would probably have had a guess. Because we do have a bit of a problem. I'm not going to say it's widespread. But occasionally you do get idiots with a bonfire throwing like aerosol cans into them. There you go, boom. Actually, when I was in the Scouts once as a lad, this was spectacular. So we were in the Scouts, we were just around the fire talking, and someone had put in an egg at the edge of it just to sort of cook it. You know, they'd put it on the edge so it was, you know, relatively indirect heat. And while he wasn't paying attention, I sort of sneaked it into the middle of the fire so he didn't notice. Anyway, about half a minute later, there was just this almighty explosion. You know, it scared the shit out of us. And I realised what it was. But when we looked into the fire, and we were all surrounding it as well, all we could see was half an egg. We don't know where the other half went. I think it must have just disintegrated. Because if any bits had flown out, it would have hit someone. Because, you know, there was no gaps in this, you know, chain of Scouts around the fire. But, you know, that was a pretty loud explosion as well. So putting an egg into a fire. But this was... I mean, I don't even know, obviously, how far away it was. So I can't really judge exactly how loud it really was. Do I have to keep reloading in BFA for the quests and maps? I don't have to keep doing it. But I did have the issue last time I streamed where I created the Warlock and it wasn't doing it there. Now, I did try a reload UI and it didn't fix it. But it was fine when I logged off and back on again much later on, though. But some people were saying reload. But I haven't had an issue where I have to keep doing it now. I mean, at the moment, I'm a bit screwed because the only 120 I've got there, my Paladin, is completely buggered because I can't get to the Horde lands because the ship isn't there in Borealis anymore. Basically, Borealis is in a phasing situation until I can complete a particular quest. But that quest isn't working, so I can't. I tried it again today. It's not working still. A friend, the largest bang you ever experienced was a friend who would unintentionally set a firework. How do you unintentionally put a firework upside down? How can people not know that the pointy end goes up towards the sky? How is that a thing? This is why basic questions should be asked of people who buy fireworks. But yeah, sorry, where was I going? Yeah, so, you know, the next character, I just really need to, next time I play in there, which will be this Friday again, I'll just probably carry on with that Warlock and you know, level that up for a bit. Am I still concerned as to where BFA Beta is at this time close to release? No, I'm not. You know, people are just saying it's never ready until, like, if it were ready now, they'd have announced the release dates in like a month's time. It'll, you know, it'll work. It'll be fine. Well, I say it'll be fine. You know, there's certain features of it that I'm not happy about, but it'll work. It'll work mechanically. So I'm not at all concerned. Because what I do as well, because I've obviously got, sometimes you have to go from your memory. It's quite tricky. But actually, I don't anymore because during Legion, I was doing regular videos. So, you know, so what I can do is I can work out how far ahead. So basically, Legion released at the end of August, whereas this one's going to be releasing mid-August. So if I were to, for example, look at a video I did mid-June 2 years ago, that's at the same point. And when I look at my videos of what I was talking about at that point, it's not really very different to what we've got at the moment in BFA. So I think it'll be, it seems to be working at close to the same schedule as Legion. So no, I've got no particular issues with that. I don't know, people just have this attitude that it should be ready. It's really just the difference between being aware that this is not early access, this is beta, this is for testing. But people get into the beta and then go, oh, there's a load of stuff not working. But it's all there. It's just not working. It's the not working bit that they're going to be working on now. So the class designers are getting ready to work on tuning because the class stuff is basically there. You know, the art team are going to be finishing off their assets. And, you know, all the different teams are just going to be now working on fixing it ready for launch. All the actual stuff's been done. It just needs getting ready. Is there any progress in the account-wide achievement reputation stuff? As many people level out, it's just no fun grinding reputation and multiple characters. There was something, wasn't there? Obviously, reputations are never going to be account-wide. But I think just like in Legion... Now, at the start of Legion, there was an awful lot of stuff that wasn't account-wide that they very quickly made account-wide. So I think the equivalent stuff, they're going to just from the start make account-wide. So, for example, world quests are going to be account-wide for your second character immediately, I think, is the way that's going to work. But, you know, the reputations themselves, because otherwise it'd be too easy for someone to get exalted, because you could just, especially later on in the expansion when they released new reputation factions, someone can just, on several characters, do the quick and easy stuff and have exalted in no time. How's the Hammer of Wrath buff? Well, it's not really a buff. They increase the damage, but they also increase the cooldown of it. So, but it's still where it was, as far as I can tell. Or as far as I can be told by people who are actually running the sims on it. But, you know, it being ready is not the same thing as it being fine. I'm still hugely concerned over a number of things. Not least of which, I still don't know what content, non-raid content, raiders are going to have to do. That's my issue. Because I'm trying to look at guilds at the moment, and at the moment I think I'm going to have to insist on a 3-day guild, Because if I end up having to do islands and Mythic Plus, as well as a Warfront each week, or every, whenever that has to be done, on top of everything else, then I don't think I can manage more than 3 days. The tank reduction, this would be the third time I had to explain it now, so I'm going to do it really briefly, but I hope you could always watch it a bit later. But basically, it makes no real difference. It makes no tangible difference at all. People are jumping to the only people I've seen people on Twitter who know nothing about it. They're just going as if 10 times threat is what's needed at the moment. Not needed. Having 10 times is a pain in the ass. It makes it much more sensible. It won't be an issue at all. And it isn't even me saying it won't be an issue for a competent tank. It won't be an issue for anyone in a tank spec. Or I really don't see how it could be. No, Cass. Some people are very nice. I feel very bad about it because the leadership, But there are too many people who are just not got the Mythic Raiding mentality. Or at least not the progress mentality. And it does my head in. It's like one thing, people make mistakes, everyone makes mistakes, I make mistakes. But when it's consistently, time after time after time, it means they're not trying because they're looking at damage meters. And it's just annoying. And the other problem is it's just too exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting, constantly progressing through an entire expansion. Like constantly on that progress thing. Because what you should... Gaz, I'm at this point, yes, I fully expect I will have to go Horde. But even so, the people are really not recruiting Ret Paladins. In fact, I've actually approached 2 guilds that say they're recruiting a Ret Paladin. And I haven't heard back from either of them. So I've had 0. And, one of them I only tried to get in touch with today. So, that might take another day. But the other one I got in touch with yesterday and have had no response whatsoever. So, and those are ones who say they're looking for Ret Paladin, not ones who are just looking for anything. Thank you, Higpig. No, Method are not trying to poach me at the moment, no. But no, I've had 0. There's 0 prospects at the moment. However, there's still several months to go. No, I said before that I would look if there's something to go for, but there isn't anything to go for. That's the problem. Because as I say, it's only this. Yeah. So with this expansion, because what's supposed to happen is you do your progress and then you complete the tier, and then there's still another month or 2 before the next tier opens. You get it on farm, so then you're getting it down to 1 or 2 nights, and that's a bit more chill. You get to recharge your batteries, do other things, and then the next tier opens up and you're back into it, and you just cycle around like that. That's fine. But when you're progressing all the way up, it means 2 things. 1, you're not getting that chill period at all until the end of the expansion, and 2, that also means you're cutting it so fine with the cutting edge that you're bound every now and then to miss out completely on the cutting edge. Well, that's not really acceptable. Not for me. I mean, I've come down a long way this expansion already, just setting as my minimum goal getting cutting edge. And when even that's not going to be guaranteed, that's just a step too far. I would rather stop Mythic Raiding completely. But I'd be loath to do that, because if I stop Mythic Raiding completely, I basically give up 2 hobbies for the price of 1. I'm trapped now. How is Ret looking in the grand scheme of things? Don't bring anything. Utility-wise, damage-wise, it will be fine. It's always fine. There's no point in doing Heroic either. Heroic's done in a week. It takes 1 raid to complete Heroic if you don't split run it. If you split run it, maybe it takes a couple. I mean, that's the problem. There is no sliding scale of difficulty. There is Heroic, which is far, far too easy for me. And then there is Mythic. Yeah, Wisdom is not worth, say, 10% increased attack power on everyone that uses attack power, or what is it, 5% extra magic damage on everyone who does magic damage on that target, or, you know, whatever. So, you know, the class buffs have just made the whole situation worse. I said from the start, even when they were planning on giving everyone a class buff, that it will just exacerbate the whole problem. Because some of them will be better than others. And that has literally turned out to be the truth. Because some people get class buffs and some people don't. So, you know, but I'm not going to keep going on about Ret, obviously. I'll leave that for when I do the next live Ret Q&A, which is probably going to be in another... I might well do one a week this Saturday. Not this Saturday, but maybe the week after. Hopefully by then, well, tuning should have started. That means also our abilities should be relatively set. So I can feel safe doing another one. Did they trim the class buffs down to primaries? Yes, but the problem is by trimming it down, it means I'm not one of the ones who got one of the trimmed down buffs. So you've got warriors who not only retain their rallying cry, which Ian Hazacosta specifically said they should not have. I say specifically said. He said no. He didn't say specifically warriors shouldn't have rallying cry, but he said, just to be clear, that no one should have a powerful healing cooldown, like a big defensive that treads on healing toes. Well, this is exactly what rallying cry is. So they still got that, and they get a buff that you can't do without. So it's like you have to have a warrior in your raid. There's no argument about it. Now, if your warrior is your tank, well, the tank brings... Actually, do they have rallying cry? Because the DPS tank, DPS warrior may still be useful for rallying cry. But for the class buff, obviously that's a class buff, so I think protection warriors get it as well. So if you have a prot warrior, okay, you don't necessarily need a DPS warrior. And the same applies to any of these. Demon hunters, again, if you don't have a demon hunter tank, you must have a melee demon hunter. If you don't have a monk tank or a monk healer, you must have a windwalker. Because you cannot do without these buffs. And it's alright them saying about scrolls. The scrolls are not as good. That's all there is to it. You know, you're losing 1%. That's 1% across everyone who would benefit from that buff. So that means that player has to be pretty bad. Or should we say, that's not very fair, significantly below the performance of the people that they would otherwise replace on the bench before they don't get in. So, you know, that's the issue. So you're always in any fight. There's the two tanks. They tend to be fairly stable. Then you've got a certain number of healers. Obviously, whether healers get in on a fight or not depends on how many healers you want. Some fights want 3 healers. Some want 5. Most want 4. But then, it's in terms of your DPS, so shall we say, on average, you need about 14 DPS. So first of all, you have to include the DPS that bring the utility that allows you to trivialize certain mechanics. Because that's the thing in Mythic, the mechanics are pretty heinous. So if any of them can be trivialized by a particular class's ability, that's what you do. Because you can turn a fight from easy to virtually impossible just by having the right roster. So you take enough of those people. Now that would leave you with a few spots where you just fill it up with whoever are the best performing players on the bench. But the problem is in BFA that if once you've got the people that have brought the utility you need, you're still lacking any of those class buffs, well, that's someone else who's guaranteed a place. So it's not such a big deal with like mages and stuff like that, because, you know, you'd bring mages anyway. So that's okay. But it's the melee ones that are the problem. Because you've now guaranteed someone. And if it's not, let's say you're a Windwalker monk, just for the sake of argument, and you're in a guild that has a Brewmaster monk and a Mistweaver monk, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, I'm going to have to compete like everyone else because they don't need me for my class buff. Well, you're desirable to other guilds now, because there'll be some guilds who don't have either a Mistweaver or a Brewmaster, or a Windwalker potentially. So you can just walk into those guilds. So utility is such a delicate thing to manage in terms of balancing, because everyone always focuses on damage. You know, I saw someone again today doing a video about, oh, let's compare classes, let's compare DPS. And it included the specific caption comparing DPS, which is complete horseshit at the moment because they haven't even started tuning. They're about to, but they haven't yet started tuning. So any discussion about DPS numbers is basically a trap for fools. They're basically literally lying to their audience, and they probably know or they're that thick that they don't know themselves. But I suspect in most cases they know full well, and they know it's a good time to do it because at the moment a lot of people are thinking what class to play. There's probably a lot of people looking up, which DPS is going, DPS is going to do the most damage, and not many people are going to do videos on it because anyone with any sort of can't think of the word now, professionalism, I suppose, for want of a better word, isn't going to produce one because it's nonsense. But yeah, that's the other problem, Action Man. Too much melee. Let's solve the problem by adding more melee classes. Because that is another issue. In that when you have those few spots left, there are, some fights where it's okay. Quite a lot of fights where it doesn't really matter, but they tend to be the easier fights. But there are fights where, if you can, you want to bring more a balance, of more range, an imbalance, I should say, of more range rather than more melee. Windwalker Monk is still OP, even not bringing the buff. Well, you don't know that because we don't know what they're like in BFA. They haven't tuned anything yet. They have been up and down through Legion. They've been very, very strong, and they've been, not nearly as strong. Many of the primary stat buffs are already attached to already very desirable classes. Not really. Not really at all. You've got mages, which are desirable, and you've got warriors, which are not actually that desirable. People easily do without warriors. They're not quite as undesirable as Rets traditionally are, but they're for all their rallying cry, they've not been the most desirable. Because they generally don't bring utility that helps you trivialize a mechanic. But they will now be essential. Yes, Reza, although there have been things that have... It is still going to be in there now with the weapon damage. They changed the way it works with the spells, but weapon damage still has an effect now. However, unlike in Legion, where you could have relics that Titan Forge, weapons won't Titan Forge. They can War Forge, but they can't Titan Forge. So, although that I was going to say you'd have to be pretty unlucky not to get yourself a decent weapon, within a reasonable amount of time. However, now that I've said that, I've just suddenly remembered, but we'll get no Master Loot. So actually, it might well depend, because... Let's say you have a particular raid and the core raid group consists of, say, a DPS warrior. Doesn't really matter whether it's Fury or Arms. You'd probably say Arms at the moment, but you never know. But there's no Unholy Death Knight at least. And there's no Blood DK. And there's no Ret Paladin. So where are you going to get your two-handers from? There's only one place. You're the only source of two-handers. So you're stuck with personal loot. How do you separate your opinion of a class and how it plays from the numbers it currently puts up? Because you have to be aware that the numbers haven't even been properly looked at yet. They're obviously keeping it, something like. But they're not going to go to any effort to seriously tune abilities whilst they're changing the way they work fundamentally. Or other things work with them. The optimal rotation could feel different, but often the people who put together the APLs for Simcraft, remember, for all my talking about the fact that Blizzard are not communicating with the wider masses, they are talking to theory crafters. So again, I knew a load of people in those comments on that video as well would come up with excuses for Blizzard. They're all nonsense. And it's nothing to do with time either, because they spend quite a lot of time talking to theory crafters. But, so yeah, they will know how things are supposed to work. So there's certain abilities, even though it doesn't work as it is now in the beta, you've got to remember as well, Blizzard can be a couple of builds ahead. So we don't actually, you know, how it is now in the beta is not actually how it is for them. You know, they're a couple of builds on. So sometimes, you know, we can get information on that because, you know, they tell the theory crafter what is intended and then they can tell other people, potentially. We have to be a little bit careful because Blizzard get a bit iffy about people passing on information, but, you know. So, you know, the people putting together the APLs basically will know what the intention is. So they should be able to put something reasonable together. Little things, of course, might change it a bit. You've been testing out personal loot right now. I mean, it's not going to be a full test in terms of drama because a lot of people now... I mean, if people at this point in the expansion are going to, you know, be loot whoring, then there's something desperately wrong with them. I know some people are still progressing, but at the same time, you know, those days are numbered. Dovrak, not to mention Windwalker General Kit, even when Windwalker was not great in PvE, they were still amazing in PvP. Well, this is the thing, though, and this is where I come from as a ret. Like, I don't care about PvP. I don't even care about dungeons, right? What I care about is mythic raiding specifically. So when I talk about utility, I specifically talk through the prism of mythic raiding. It doesn't matter that that utility is actually going to be fairly useful in dungeons, as it has been anyway. Irrelevant to me because I'm not going to push. I'm just going to do dungeons when I have to. But I do want to do. I choose to do mythic raiding. You want your divine tempest along all the law. Well, we're not getting them. Sorry. I said in the rep video something about difference about DPS numbers from different talents. For instance, is DP going to be possible to use? And still only have like 1% difference. There is an idea for divine. Okay, I shouldn't be talking too much about rets because this isn't a ret video. But just very quickly, there is an idea. I don't know that this is going to happen. To make divine purpose as well as have the proc chance to also increase the damage of the thing you use your divine purpose proc on, which could then balance it out with the others. Which is not one. This is not something that I am terribly happy about. But it, you know, it would work. Not everyone agrees with me. No, indeed, not everyone does agree with me. But from Blizzard's point of view, they need to identify what are the most difficult forms of content. So you've got rated battleground stroke arenas, probably arenas more so, Mythic Plus dungeons, high keys, and Mythic raiding. They should make sure that everyone. And they said they would do this as well and lied through their teeth. I knew they would be. They need to make sure that everyone is of equal worth in all three forms of that difficult content. Because they're the ones who have chosen to have three high-level endgame forms of content in the game. So it's their responsibility to make sure that people can play the class and role that they want to play and be useful. It's their philosophical decision to not do that. You know, they've made a conscious decision to not do that. So I get to blame them. I mean, it would be equally appalling if, for example, my utility was fine in, you know, say, Mythic Raiding and very missable in, say, Mythic Plus Dungeons or PvP. I wouldn't complain about it because I wouldn't care. But, you know, it would be just as bad. You were progressing Argus for so long you forgot you were on your guild's loot council. Well, I think what was it now? In my last guild, when we were doing, I think there was a couple of bosses actually, where by the time we actually killed it, we forgot it was still on, we hadn't put it on master loot. Because, you know, it was one of those things where you spend whole nights on a boss. It's not really, if you don't expect to kill the boss, you don't really set it on master loot, do you? Or sometimes you don't. Is my love for Ret larger than my hunger for Mythic Raiding? I won't swap. The reason I won't swap is because it's not specifically wanting to play Ret, although that's a big part of it. There is no other class that I would be happy playing. Now, that's not always the same. Like, there are some MMOs that I play or have played where, you know, I might have a favourite class, but there's another one that I'd be okay with. But that's not the case in World of Warcraft. With every other class in World of Warcraft, I can play it for a bit, but then I want to change. You know how some people with their mains, you know, it's like they play as one class, one tier, then they want to change it for the next tier? That's what I'd be like if it weren't for Ret Paladins. That would be me. So I never actually criticise people who do that either, just because I understand that if it weren't for Ret Paladins, that would be me. So that is the issue. There is zero chance of me changing mains. Under no circumstances would I do that. Because there isn't another class that I'd be prepared to do. Is BFA going to be as alt unfriendly as Legion was at the start? It's not going to be as bad as it was at the start of Legion. It is going to be as bad as Legion, but not right at the start of Legion, because they learnt from that. Because some of the things they did to improve alt friendliness over the course of the expansion was simply to take account of the fact that old content was old. But some of it they actually did get wrong. They made it too difficult at the start of the expansion, and they realised that. So, you know, for example, unlocking certain types of content with rep, that's going to be account-wide. The rep itself is not going to be account-wide, but the unlocking of the content is, in most cases at least. But it's still what I would call alt unfriendly. I mean, it made me laugh when Blizzard said that Legion was the most alt friendly expansion there's ever been, where just you can't say that, because all you used to have to do with alts before was gear them up. Well, now you had to gear them up and get artifact power and get legendaries. There's no way you could say it was alt friendly. Now, whether you say it's actually alt unfriendly depends on your point of view, but you certainly just objectively can't say it's more friendly than previous expansions, because it objectively isn't. And the same with BFA. We don't have the legendaries. You could say from that point of view, we've gone down from needing 3 things down to 2. So that makes it better than Legion, because there's no legendary grind. But then, to be fair, the stuff you did to get legendaries was the stuff you're still going to need to do to get both gear and artifact power anyway. So it doesn't necessarily make it friendlier as such. It wasn't even spec friendly at the start. It certainly wasn't spec friendly. No. Or even most of the way through progress. I mean, I said at the time it was absolute madness doing what they were doing, because there was, like, what Blizzard do, obviously they put certain things in the game, like artifact. This was their thinking, I'm sure of it. So artifact power is something you put in the game to increase the longevity of content. It's to get you farming content. That's all it exists for. It's a form of keeping you in the game, redoing content so that you can build up your artifact power and unlock traits. So because they saw it as that, and they saw, so the suggestion that the artifact power should be assigned to you as a player and go on each of your weapons equally, they'd be looking at that and going, no, because actually if we make it specific to each weapon, then you triple, or in the case of druids, quadruple, or in the case of demon hunters, just double, the amount of time people have got to spend getting all this stuff up. Or you're not quite double and tripling it, are you? Because you've got artifact knowledge, but still. Whereas what they failed to realise is there was so much content in Legion, you didn't have to make people do even more. There was already plenty to do that if people were wanting to do it, would mean they'd have to subscribe every month anyway, which is the goal. That is the aim. getting people to stay subscribed. Whereas my attitude to alts was, I can't be arsed. You know, I still haven't leveled all of them for like the first expansion for a while. And I just don't want to, because every time I get one to level cap, it's like, oh, I really don't want to do anything. Because I just think about what I'd have to do with it. Anyway. Your guild took 6 weeks extended on Argus. Extended is such a bad idea on Argus. Or any boss, really. Reserved the first 6 mounts. You've not got much more than 6 mounts coming. You're killing it for the 5th time. Oh, sorry, this is some time ago. Killing it for the 5th time tonight. You're considering leaving. You don't like the nepotism and taking... Yeah, well, what we did in our guild is the first mount went to the guild master, which is fair enough. But every mount since, we've just put it on personal loot. So, except we forgot this week, it went on master loot, but we rolled for it. So basically, it's all gone to, it's been randomised, which is a better way of doing it. And it was specifically done like that because we knew that if we had a priority system of, you know, like veteran raiders, normal raiders and trials and stuff like that, that meant a lot of people that did work on the progress having zero chance of getting it. So that's what they've done. Because hardly anyone's going to end up with a mount for us. I mean, when we killed Argus for the first time, it was several weeks before we were able to re-kill it. That's how bad it was. We couldn't re-kill it for ages. It's about a month later. So we lost a good 3 or 4 mounts. And we were, even at that time, we were never going to get enough. Because they're not even going to raid until the expansion. With the separation of AP and gear rewards, you think we will need to spend more time per character to keep it within the current curve that we currently do? I don't know. This is one of the questions I don't know. Because it might well be that the amount of artifact power we need... Because remember, it's not... The way the Azeroth pieces are working, it's not like the artifact weapons, where you had this sort of endless thing to get. And once you'd got all the abilities, then you had your Paragon traits. It hasn't really got that. There's a definite, you know, you need this much artifact level to unlock all the traits on it. And as soon as you've got that level, and if that's like the best piece of gear, let's say the mythic raid version of that thing, you don't need to get any more until the next tier. Excuse me. And remember, there's still going to be artifact knowledge. So I think it depends how they decide to tune it. If they've learnt a lesson, and I hope they have, that there was enough content in the game to keep us playing without needing to make the artifact power grind too onerous. If they've learnt from that, it might be more manageable. So it's got the potential to be better. But the problem is, I don't know, because we're still in a situation where people are quite rightly saying, you know, world quests are the best source of artifact power, but Blizzard said it should be islands, and that's not the case at the moment. The AP grind is there, but usually not too difficult to catch up. Well, it all depends. If some people will have in their guild certain requirements, you must be at this level by this week, and then it can be quite a lot. But again, I have no idea. There's not enough information yet to judge how much time you have to spend outside of raids chasing AP. And also how much of it you can do solo and how much you're actually going to have to do in a group, preferably a guild group. You have a lot of kills, but you're not going to get everyone amount. No, well, that's the problem. I mean, that is the problem. It's a twin problem. One with the last expansion of the last tier of the expansion. Pardon my little Freudian slip there. And the fact that for the first time in God knows how long, there isn't a very lengthy content drought. I mean, you know, if there was still another 6 months to go, then it would be a different matter. But there isn't. You know, what are we on now? Where are we? 3 months? Less than 3 months. 2.5 months to go. So, you'll get everyone that was in for the first kill. Well, I mean, in many ways that can be fair enough, because you would, unless there was, you would hope that everyone that was in for the first kill was the ones who did the bulk of the progress on it anyway. I mean, anyone who joined after you killed it doesn't really have a right to it anyway. I say a right to it as if they shouldn't have it. They, you know, no problem with them having it. But, you know, if I joined a guild, I wouldn't consider myself to have an automatic right to it. You have 16 Argus kills and you're barely getting everyone a mount. But yeah, well, that's, yeah. Well, like I say, there hasn't been a great big long lead into the next expansion like there has been previously. I mean, I don't know from Blizzard's point of view. Again, you have to think the mount thing, offering a mount, is again a way to get us to redo the content time after time after time. Because obviously they want us to stay subscribed. But I would put it this way, and I would suggest that the majority of Mythic Raiders, I'm not saying all, but the majority of Mythic Raiders will stay subscribed anyway. So I don't really see the need for the Mythic rewards for them. I'm not saying everyone should get one instantly. Maybe they should just drop 2 or something. Because that's what used to happen when there was 10-man and 25-man raiding. It's because 10-man raiding would get a mount drop. So you had to have more for 25-man, although it's still not in proportion, because it was only 2 mounts, not 2 and you can't really have 2.5 mounts drop. But yeah, so I think they should make more of an effort to allow people to get those mounts. Not put people in a position where, you know, guilds that killed it in a reasonable amount of time can just about manage it at a struggle. Guilds who did it right up to the edge can't. And guilds who killed it after that, no chance. Silver lining is a couple of people don't care much because they think the mount is ugly. The mount is ugly. It's deeply ugly. However, it's not what the mount looks like. It's what it represents. It represents that, I know you've got your cutting edge achievement for this as well in your title, but it represents that you killed that boss. Okay, they've still got a 1% chance to do it in the following expansion, stuff like that. But that's the only reason I would want it, because it's a reward that's associated with the piece of content that I actually enjoy doing in the game. Like, I don't go round farming mounts, for example. I have no interest in mounts for content I haven't done. I have only interest in mounts for content I did do. And at the time, I've no interest in... Like, there's some mounts I didn't get from Dragon Soul, of course, even though I progressed through that. But I don't go back to try and farm them, because I didn't get them at the time, so I'll do without. The extra carrots are superfluous in Mythic, mostly. They are. That being said, I think it does still serve a bit of a purpose. It's just another thing... It is useful making Mythic a bit special as a motivator for people to aspire to doing Mythic, right? I mean, the mount is not a strong enough motivator, I think, to be worth all the hassle of Mythic. But it's just another thing, isn't it? It's like a little thing that builds up, you know, are you happy just doing Heroic? Or would you like to do Mythic, spend, you know, far, far longer and go through many more trials and tribulations? But you get these things as well. So I think it's more for the people that aren't doing Mythic, but that might be tempted to do Mythic. You think the map might exist to incentivize players who... Oh, do you know what? I've just said that, sorry. Might otherwise... sorry, no, talking about something else. Incentivize players who might otherwise stop raiding entirely once they've gotten their cutting edge. Maybe, but again, here's the thing. Those... Like, when we killed Argus, we had several raiders who just stopped immediately because they were always going to do that. They didn't care about the mount enough, all right? They would have wanted the mount, I'm sure. You know, it's not like if a roll was done for the mount on the first kill, they wouldn't have rolled. They would have done. But don't care about it enough to want to carry on. So you'll get some people who will stop subscribing anyway. But the majority of... raiders are not the ones you need to work on to keep subscribing, especially Mythic raiders. they tend to stay subscribed because, you know, they're getting what they want from the game. It's more casual players who can consume the content at the level they're prepared to do it at much more quickly that they need to worry about. And mythic mounts have got nothing to do with that. So I really don't see the need to be so stingy with that. Bake some bad luck protection on the drops. What drops? Sorry. Oh, the 1% drops. No, again, I don't... I mean... No. I wonder when we'll be able to... Oh, thank you, JD. I wonder when we will be able to actually solo Argus. Because I may come back just to kill it, just for the hell of it, at some point. Like, would I be able to go back and solo Mythic Archimon now? Because that's the other one. You virtually subscribe. Let's have a look. Where was I? Oh, your working week starts on Tuesdays. Yeah, that's nice. Get Mondays off. Garfield would love to have that job. So we can solo Archimond. Ah. See, I don't need anything off Archimond. But it's nice to know, because that would suggest that in the next expansion, perhaps at some point, I could solo my way to, and... Are there any mechanics that would make it awkward to solo? We'll see. So maybe I'll go back at some point. Personally, you want the... Oh, well, that's the other thing, of course. You know, that a weapon, I haven't got any of them. So, yeah, you've got mount. So you've got a few cosmetic rewards. Actually, I say I haven't got any of them. That's not fair. I've got the dog mount. So I have got one thing from the Mythic. But I don't have the weapon from either Agrimar or Argus of any type. And, of course, I don't have the Argus mount. I don't have Amanthal's vision either, which I'm not happy about. Really not happy about that. So awesome. But Sod's Law, you know, it's one of those typical things. I'll probably get it on my last ever kill of Argus on whatever mode. With personal loot in BFA, will guaranteed raid mounts drops be a thing of the past? It'll just drop like it does now. It will be guaranteed, but it'll be guaranteed for someone who hasn't got the mount. You know, so just one person in the raid will automatically get it. But it doesn't have an item level, so it'll be tradable. So it'll still probably go to... I don't know how it'll go. Like if you've got a buyer, you'll still be able to get them. If everyone else has got them out, it might just be automatically theirs. So, you know, there's, you know, the trade, the rules for looting in BFA, as far as I can tell from what Ian Hazakostas was saying, are exactly the same as personal loot works now. So it should be completely tradable because it hasn't got an item level, just like it is now. Oh, you've had you've had a holiday of your bank holiday. Isn't the stat squish going to make raiding old expansion content harder? No, because everything gets squishified. Obviously, just, you know, whenever they do anything like this, sometimes there are little pockets of areas where it doesn't quite work. But, you know, that'll just be a case of reporting it, and when you report it, Blizzard will sort it out at some point. Have I tried Bless Online? I have zero interest in trying Bless Online. It looks like a crap version of Black Desert Online. I've watched, you know, a few people who got access to test it out, do videos on it, and there's nothing at all interesting about it. There is zero elements of interest in it for me. I can't really see how it's interesting for anyone. You know, if it's an enjoyable MMO, fair enough, but there's nothing in it that's like different at all. Not a single player in your guild, main or alt, has Amanthal's vision. Well, I don't know about alts, but certainly no one in our raid roster has it. I don't think they do anyway. I'm pretty sure they don't, because they would be dangling it in front of my face if they did. I've only ever seen it dropped once, and that was when there was Pinky Tiger. I don't know whether he's here at the moment. He usually says hello if he is. He joined our guild group, and he got it. And do you know what the funny thing was? There was that, there was that weak aura that basically fools you. It's like a practical joke. It tells you you've got it, but you haven't really got it when you check your bags. And they were trying to get him to download that weak aura, or to install, to install, I should say. But the irony was that he actually got it. At the very least, your speed set using Agrimar's Stride is going to break come 115. Yeah, well, that's what I'm doing as well. I'm going speedy set for the. I don't need anything else. None of the so-called power legendaries are of any real use in leveling content. So you might as well have speediness. BFA will have plenty of speed items. It won't have Agrimar's Stride. It won't have anything like Agrimar's Stride at all. Oh, where have we gone? Hi, Loxley. Then, well, there will be traits. There are some traits, for example, on leveling gear, that means when you kill a mob, you get a bit of a speed boost. So there may well also be, indeed, raid-based speedy traits too. Yeah. But it won't be as good as the Agrimar's Stride. I'll be very doubtful if it is. Or maybe one of the traits will be that, because some of them are being recycled, of course. Some of the Azerite traits are straight-up copies of the legendary effects. And some of them are potentially copies of artifact traits that we're going to be losing as well. Have I read the new Magni comic? Yes, I have. I do. Yeah, I read it when it was first announced. I was actually paying attention this time. Wasn't keen on it though. Wasn't keen on it. I don't think it's even worth doing a video on it. There's no interest in it at all. Look, it was dull. Hunger of the Pack trinket. Yes, I had that for a bit. Where they're not squishing the island, they are squishing everything. Someone said that raiding some stuff solo will be harder in BFA. There's no reason for it to be any harder in BFA than Legion, other than, as I say, when you do these squishers, something will slip the net. There will be some little thing at a particular level. I mean, it's the same thing when they did the zone scaling. There was some content that was harder at certain points, but it's just, you report it, enough people report it, Blizzard get onto it, they sort it out. And the same thing will happen here. Yes, there will be these little pockets that slip through, but then as soon as Blizzard are notified of it, they'll deal with it. Just seemed they were trying to draw a correlation between his relationship with his daughter's relationship with Azeroth. Yeah, that was entirely it. That was 100% what that comic was about. Crap. Absolute crap. Because at the end of it, he got no closer to actually knowing what Azeroth wanted. All he could say was, I'm there for you. Fat lot of good that is. Got a bloody sword stuck in her. I think she needs him to do a little bit more than be there for her. 4 pages just to show he's not giving up on Azeroth. Which we knew anyway, because he's dedicated his life to being the speaker for Azeroth. Hi, Lamnakin. So yeah, the Magni comic, nowhere near as interesting as the Jaina one. I mean, that in itself wouldn't necessarily be a criticism, because the Jaina one was very interesting. But, it was specifically... Oh, thank you, Lamnakin. Well, loads of people subscribing today. It was specifically really awful. Really dreadful. Truly, truly dreadful. That reminds me. Oh, never mind. I'll do it later. So, yeah. But, so... No, I don't think I'll do a video on it. I don't think... I won't be able to talk for more than about 2 minutes. You know. That was a thing. Hold on. What did I see? I saw a video. I can't remember who did it now. Talking about videos that shouldn't really be any length of time. I didn't watch the video, admittedly. But I saw a video flash up today that said... 5 million, you know the mount with the auction house on it cost 5 million gold, and it said 5 million gold auction house mount guide, and I thought, what guide do you need for that mount? You go to the vendor, which you can actually do as early as level 110, and you fork over 5 million gold, and it gives you the mount. And then you right-click on the mount, and you've got the mount. And then you find the mount in your mounts tab, and you drag it onto your bars, and then you left-click that button, and you're riding the mount. How do you need to do a guide on that? Seriously. A rep guide? Bollocks, was it? Otherwise it would say so. Anyway, what guide do you need for that? It's like, do things that give you rep for these people. The Exalted will indeed drop it by 20%, as it always does, yes. In my case, I mean, the only thing I want to know is, do you have to have a Horde character to get it? Because, you know, it's notable for being... well, it's a Brontosaur. I suppose there might be an alliance vendor that can sell you a Brontosaur, but it fits very much with Zuldazar, which is where the vendor is on the Horde side. I mean, that's the thing that's, you know, scratching my nose. Not that I'm going to be desperate, I suppose. You don't have to be Horde. Okay, good. I wonder who sells it for the alliance then. But that's useful at least. I would have been pretty annoyed about that. Good, good. That's fine then. You say you allies, I might well be Horde anyway when the time comes. Yeah, the chances of me actually being able to find... At the moment, I am having a devil of a job. I can't even apply to a guild at the moment. There's no one to even apply to. You know, the 2 guilds I had questions of, neither of them even got back to me. Let's have a look, actually, if one of them has now. Nope. So, but, you know, I've only just started. So when it does, it's almost certainly going to be Horde, isn't it? There's hardly anyone staying alive. I'd actually be curious if I could be bothered to spend the time, which I can't because I've got a big day tomorrow. But if I could be bothered, it would be interesting to note not only how many alliance guilds there currently are in, say, the top 300, let's say, but how many of them are still going to be alliance come the next expansion. Some have already gone Horde, and some of them are announcing that they are going to go Horde. There's a guy next to the black market auction house that sells it. Oh, well, there you go. Okay. At the moment, I have no people like that anyway. Borrelus is completely deserted for me. Apart from at one entrance, at the southern entrance, because the quest that I can't complete has knackered it all. You still maintain there should be a third faction. There should be a third faction where it's a PvP game. When it's a chiefly PvE game, there should be no faction for PvE. You know, it should be the case that there's no such thing as factions for PvE, but they exist for PvP purposes. That's how things have to work now. You know, it's the lesson that Elder Scrolls Online learned pretty quickly, because they started off with the faction thing, and then fairly quickly realised what everyone else has come to realise over 15 years of MMOs having this situation, or however many it is now. Go join Preach and the Fat Boss, guys. What? No. Where was I? Yes. It's is that factions are a barrier to people enjoying PvE, so they don't have them. There's nothing good about Bell threats. They're just better than the alternative. And I would still have a Blood Elf over a Zandalari. I know people are getting all, lordy about Zandalari troll paladins, but they're a big step up from Tauren paladins, I'll grant you. But still, they're still trolls. They still can't wear shoes. If they can't wear shoes, paladins have to have nice, clean-looking armor, and if they can't even wear shoes, then that is a non-starter. What if they get rid of Horde and Alliance, instead we get to choose light or shadow? Again, we still got to choose. You're still doing something that means you choose one thing, and friends choose another, and you're prevented from playing with each other. Right? It's Jimmy's story all over again. If you've never seen Jimmy's story, I suggest you do. And it's the same issue. There has to be, when it comes to PvE, there has to be a complete mix. There has to be no barriers to any two people in PvE playing together. For whatever reason. Well, in terms of faction anyway. It seems Blizzard aren't doing anything. Indeed. I memean, this is the annoying thing is, if they'd have just carried on with their, verbal diarrhea about, play whichever one you want, then I would just be rolling my eyes. That's all. The thing that's actually annoyed me is the fact that they acknowledged it as an issue and said they were doing something about it. But the fact that at this late stage they still haven't given any clues at all about what that is, means whatever it is too late. Because guilds are, with each passing, I'm not going to say week, but every couple of weeks at least, more guilds are making the decision to go Horde. ESO has cross-faction PvP. Yes, it does. There are factions in the game, but they only have any meaning in PvP. For PvE, it makes no difference. So, it's all fine. It's all good. Do you think this will be a make or break expansion for Blizz? Every expansion is make or break. Every single one. I mean, as bad as WoD was, they still, at the end of it, had a large number of subscribers for an MMO. Okay, it's no longer as high as its dizzying heights of Wrath, but it's still more, it's not even respectable, it's still a lot. Other MMOs would love to have as many subscribers as Blizzard had, even through Warlords of Draenor. So, as bad as WoD was in many ways, it didn't break them. But any expansion, if they get it badly wrong, will break it. They won't be able to recover. When they make a WoW 2, they may never make a WoW 2, though. They will make another Warcraft game, whether it will be a WoW 2 or a different type of Warcraft game remains to be seen. But whatever if they did do another World of Warcraft 2, they would absolutely have to modernise it. They have to modernise it. I mean, look, coming back to Bless Online that someone was talking about earlier, what's the number one criticism? Does anyone know what's the number one criticism that I've seen anyway of Bless Online? Because there are a number. Fairly uninteresting. But has anyone noticed a particular thing keeps cropping up as a main criticism of what is, for our market, a new game? Obviously, it's been in Korea for a bit. Is WoW still the main cash cow? I don't know. Because not all of the cash comes from subscriptions with WoW. They make a lot of money from other things as well. So I don't know what the relative balance is. Yeah. No, I'm not talking about it not working. That's just a thing. But the criticism I've seen is the targeting system, old-fashioned. It's not quite tab targeting, so I've been told, but it's pretty similar to it. It's not action combat. Modern MMOs are action combat. And that's just one of the things they need. So they need to modernise it in a lot of ways if they were to do another one. But you see, some of the ways in which they could modernise it, they could do in World of Warcraft. I'm not saying that they could abolish factions for PvE, though. Because it's all right saying it makes sense. I bet there would be a big backlash against it. There would be a lot of people who wouldn't be in favour of it. So that's not one that I'm suggesting they could do now. But there are some things that they could. You wouldn't like it if they went away from tab targeting. That's modern game. Tab targeting existed for a time when we all had shit internet. We don't now. We have broadband as standard. We don't need it. It existed because in the early days of MMOs, particularly, even early days of WoW, there was a discrepancy between where you thought an opponent was, if it was on the move, and where the game thought it was. So you had to have tab targeting. You had to have a thing so you and the game both agreed what you were targeting, what you were aiming your spells at. And as long as it didn't disappear behind you, that would be okay. Whereas now, there's general agreement between what your computer thinks is going on and what the game servers think is going on. So you can do that now. And that's the only reason tab targeting exists in the first place. Not because, it's more fun. I mean, some people may find it. But I think people who do are probably just used to it. But it's not a good thing to do. I mean, how many times, for example, in a sea of things, are you trying to click on a bloody mob that you want? Or when you try and auto-target something, it targets something way over there when you want the thing that's right in front of your face. That sort of issue isn't a problem with action combat. You just point your character in the right direction, smash your sword down, or fire off your fireballs or whatever. It hits what it hits, what you're aiming it at. Tab targeting's a pain in the ass. They need to make it playable on the PlayStation. I think they inevitably would, because like I keep saying, I struggle to see how they would get funding for World of Warcraft 2, given that unless they did something radical, it's not going to make more money than World of Warcraft. They'd rather keep that going. But one thing that would allow them to say, yeah, we can make more, is if it's made for consoles as well. Now, I don't know what that would mean in reality, because the only experience I've got of an MMO that is also playable on the console is Elder Scrolls Online. And I don't think it's very user-friendly for a PC player. But hopefully a console-friendly World of Warcraft would be better. WoW's combat system is... Well, it's not unique now because Star Wars The Old Republic ripped it off. And there's still... Lord of the Rings Online is still going. And that obviously did the same thing. So it's not unique. It's just you don't get brand new games doing the same thing. Unless they're low-budget crap. You just don't think Mage as you like it could exist without tab targeting. I don't know. You might just be used to it and afraid of change, but who knows? But I think it's infinitely better when you don't have to target. But there's no getting away from it. There is no reason at all for them to have tab targeting in a completely new World of Warcraft. Does it hurt anyone that King makes more money for Activision Blizzard than anyone? King? Who's King? The limitations often applied to consoles think would break a game like World of Warcraft. Well, it'd have to be redesigned for that market, because that's the only way they're going to be able to get it off the ground. I'm convinced of that. The console market is extremely lucrative. Extremely lucrative. Elder Scrolls Online would not be the big success it is now were it not for their entry on the they tried telling a lie. They tried saying in development that they designed it for the PC and then realized, oh, we could actually make this for a console. We should do that. That was obvious horseshit. They designed it for the console, but there's no reason not to bring it out PC as well. And it's because of that console slice of the market. Because that's why they put it off as well. Because they released it on PC before console, but when it was released on PC, it was announced. The release date was announced for console, but then they scrapped it. Because they knew that there was no way they could afford a release like the PC release was a shambles, and they couldn't afford the game to be in that state when it went live on console, because that would be a disaster for them from which they would not recover. So they put it off. That's how important the console market is. It's way bigger than the PC market. And they'd be a fool. If I was, someone in charge of the purse strings at Blizzard, I would definitely be telling, even though I personally as a player wouldn't like it, I would definitely be telling them to make it for console. And then just make sure it's suitable for PC. The only difference I would make with Elder Scrolls Online is I would also say, look, the console players and the PC players are not going to be sharing the same servers anyway. So there's no mixing of those player base. So just make sure that the interface for the PC version is suitable for a PC. Don't just map on the same one, because it's crap. You've played stuff like Wildstar and just didn't like how casters worked. Okay, well. Is ESO played first person? Only if you're daft. You can choose to play first person just like you can in WoW. It's not sensible. You certainly don't have to. I don't play it in first person. How would our beloved Rhett Pally work without tab targeting? A damn sight better. That's how. I'll just have to smash things in front of me. All I'd have to do is stand next to something and smash it over the head. Instead of picking up the bloody thing. Like, because when I use an ability, when I use bind that says target the nearest enemy, instead of targeting the thing in front of my face, it targets something 30 yards away. How is that the nearest target? I'm not even looking at it. Absolute rubbish. Tab targeting doesn't even work in WoW. Not consistently, anyway. I'm not saying it always does that. Most of the time, fair enough, it does target the thing right in front of my face. But the fact that every now and then it targets something miles away. Anyway. The concept of a high difficulty race in PvE. Content. Oh, okay, that's all race. With quick book fixes we see in Mythic Raiding won't be possible in consoles. I don't know. I don't really know enough about console, how it works in reality. Endgame raiding simply couldn't be as frequent or fast-paced on a console release. Again, I can't comment on that, but there are raids in Elder Scrolls Online. It might be worth finding out how people who play those on a console get on with it. It might be fine. You might be underestimating them. Those dog mobs right before the hounds. Yeah, that's just a classic example of where tab targeting fails completely. Out of range, out of range. That target is too far away, or whatever the hell I say. Absolute nonsense. I should just smash whatever's in front of me. Job done. Hi, Pinky. I'm fine, thank you. You think tab target is crap for melee, but how would a dot class and dot management exist in action combat? It does exist in action combat. You have that in Elder Scrolls Online as well. My character has dots to put on. And hots. Hots on me, dots on the mob. Not easy to track with the standard UI either. I need to get some add-ons, really. But it works. You have them. It's not a problem. You still aim. All right? You can still aim. It's just that it will put them on the thing that's in your sight. You still have sights. It'll just put them on the thing that's in your sights. It is semi-smart as well. It sort of works out, it doesn't have to be dead in the centre either. If it's a little bit off to the side and you're roughly tracking it, it sort of knows what you're aiming at as well. It's all works fine. I'm a big stick in the mud. I don't like change much either if it's for the sake of change. But I'd be very welcoming of a new World of Warcraft that had action combat. I mean, I really don't believe they would even consider having tab targeting at all. Really can't. I don't believe it. You have quite a few options as well in terms of, your smart targeting. Yes, indeed. In fact, there's a hell of a lot of options. How would you inspect people? With great difficulty. That is one thing that is missing in Elder Scrolls Online, but it's nothing to do with it being action combat, because there's nothing to stop you, again, targeting a person and having a keybind that allows you to inspect them. That's just, could you put it in the game? They just haven't in Elder Scrolls Online. In fact, when I look at other players, I can't even tell what bloody class they're playing. I've got no idea. But the only thing I can tell is what level they are. What makes it worse, sorry. Hang on, what am I missing? But anyway, that's what they would do. They would do that anyway, regardless of who would be in favour. There's so many more people who would be in favour of it. That's just what they would do. But as I say, it's not necessarily even guaranteed. Like, I don't think they would abandon the MMO market, because why would they? They're good at it, or they have been good at it. It's very difficult to say at this moment in time. Is World of Warcraft really successful because they are maintaining their position as the kings of MMOs, or are they just holding on to past glories, and people are not wanting to leave it because they've invested so many years in their character and in the game? There's an element of that. But they're definitely going to do another Warcraft game at some point, and I can't think it's going to be that many years away. If we're in 5 years' time, if we still haven't either got or there's imminently going to be released another Warcraft game, I'd be gobsmacked. But also, it's not necessarily going to be an MMO, but I'm sure there will be another MMO as well. But it might be that they do an MMO for StarCraft or Diablo. Because those franchises don't really seem to be going anywhere at the moment, as far as I can tell. Admittedly, not being someone who actively plays them. But I really don't see what they're doing at the moment with StarCraft and Diablo. So maybe they're thinking of doing an MMO for those. I might be interested in the Diablo one. I would not be interested in the StarCraft one. You have to look at their style of gear and their monster helmet, watch their abilities. Well, it's watching their abilities that gives the game away. But not everyone uses abilities associated with their class. Sometimes they just use weapon abilities. But, it's not particularly... And in terms of style of gear, that doesn't mean anything to me. You don't do another MMO because of the time invested. Well, the time invested is, of course, it's a big factor in putting people off starting a new MMO, certainly. And, of course, something that Blizzard can take advantage of. A big factor in people not giving up the one they are playing. Yeah, absolutely. You won't put another year into another MMO when you've got 14 on WoW. Well, at some point, WoW will stop. I mean, I don't think, it's imminent, I should say. It is inevitable, but not imminent. If Blizzard styled their game after... I don't think they should style it after ESO. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there are a few lessons to learn. And it's not a case of me saying it should have action combat. If they did a World of Warcraft 2, it would have action combat. It would, because that's the modern way of doing it. No one does tab targeting now. Apart from games that were made when tab targeting was a thing. But no one makes new games with tab targeting. Doesn't exist. And the other thing should be the faction thing. They need to sort that out. But it shouldn't be just Elder Scrolls Online mapped onto the World of Warcraft thing, that would be foolish. It doesn't work. And also, yeah, the combat system itself, okay, the fact that it's action combat is good, but the general combat system is not good. All this animation cancelling that goes on in it is very bad. That's very poor game design. So they certainly shouldn't copy that. I don't think they would, because Blizzard actually, you know, when there was some animation cancelling with Demon Hunters at the start of Legion, and they knocked, I say at the start of Legion, I mean in beta, because it wasn't there when it launched, because they'd knocked it on the head by then. So, you know, I think we could be fairly sure they wouldn't encourage that sort of poor system. Changing core things would be risky. It wouldn't be a change in any core things, because it would be a new game. That's all there is to it. It would be a brand new game. So they you know, they wouldn't even, the people who build it won't even be thinking of it as, it's not an updated World of Warcraft. It's a completely new game. That's what it would be if they did it. And that's how it would be perceived. It would simply be based on the lore of Warcraft. It wouldn't be so much World of Warcraft 2 as Warcraft 5. Blizzard may well do a better job than ZeniMax. But they would still have modern features in it. They would not have tab targeting. The purpose of tab targeting does not exist anymore, and that's all there is to it. So it'd be gone. Animation, yeah, well, you say animation cancel is left on purpose. You know, I don't know that that's true. It's in there, the developers don't have an issue with it. It's not quite the same thing as being left on purpose. It could just be that the way the developers look at it, the way to not have it pisses about with other design ideas that they don't want to piss about with. So they accept it. But it's a degenerate playstyle. You would absolutely have to be able to copy your main to R2. No, you wouldn't. It's a new game. You would, under no circumstances, copy anything. The absolute most, because it would be on Battle.net, if they may give you some cosmetic rewards in the new game if you had certain achievements, let's say based on achievement points. If you've got 1,000 achievement points, you get a thing. You know, and for each 1,000 achievement points you've got in World of Warcraft, at the point at which it launches, you get certain rewards, which might be titles, mounts, pets, whatever. You know, that's the closest they could ever get to giving someone who'd played World of Warcraft a thing. And then, of course, to get people to transfer, they could have it where it says, but you only get these rewards if you pre-order it, say. You know, you've got to actually have an active subscription when this thing goes live. After that point, you get nada. But under no circumstances could you copy a character. It's a different game. It will be in a different setting. It won't even take place immediately after the events in World of Warcraft. Because apart from anything else, it'd be perfectly possible to keep World of Warcraft going for a bit longer anyway. I don't know what I missed. I'll keep missing stuff every time I go off on one. What if the level was... Hang on. No copying characters at all. Some cosmetic rewards. Some. Small number. It might not even be the same classes. You know. In fact, it would be foolish to have all the same... There might be some classes that are in common. But they actually ought to rethink the whole concept of classes as well. They should properly modernise the whole thing. If I were Blizzard and I was engaged on this project, I would make sure that the senior people on the project were people who had not even had that much to do with World of Warcraft. To make sure that you weren't just copying something across. And having a cap at level 60... before you've even... See, that's another thing that would be foolish. Because the other thing they should do is actually think... When they made World of Warcraft, they didn't know how long it was going to go on for. They need to think, right, it is now the standard. An MMO must last at least 10 years. That's got to be your aim, at least 10 years. With that in mind, they need to be thinking about how they manage levels. Preferably not really having much. They should have a dual leveling system. You know, your normal levels, which caps at whatever, and then your Paragon leveling system, which is what you can increase for each expansion. And have that account bound. So, you know, you give me some ideas here. I might do a video on it. But you know, it just, every aspect of it has to be modernized. Every single aspect. Yeah. Gifts. Like I say, and only applying if you pre-order it, so that you don't just get to not play it and then realise it's actually quite good after a year, join across and go, right, where's my stuff? It's like, no. You know, we're doing it to encourage you to basically play our new game. So you'd have to pre-order it, and if you do that, then because it's on your Battle.net, it's quite easy for them to deal with it. You know, just based on achievement. I would literally base it on achievement points. I wouldn't worry about, oh, you're a mythic raider, so you get this or anything like that. I would just, because, you know, because that gets messy. I would just base it on achievement points. Have certain thresholds. You know, above this many, you get this. And that actually would hurt me because I'm not an achievement point hunter. I have very few achievement points. But I wouldn't care. Actually, I might care if I miss out on something awesome. But it doesn't matter. Can certainly see it being tied to a pre-order for sure. Well, absolutely, of course. Because the aim would be that, well, like with any game, when you release a game, you want it to have a stonking start. So that it gets all the right things being said about it in the press. And it just, the momentum gathers. And you get into it with loads and loads of people buying it. Because that'll be people's... that would be people's concern. Because there is this mindset at the moment. It is very, very difficult to say whether Blizzard, the current development team, are actually good or not. Obviously, different people have different opinions on that. Because you can't say to what extent World of Warcraft makes the money it does because of their efforts, or just because it's trading on the fact that there's millions of players that have got so much time invested in the game that they're not going to lightly give it up. Whereas a new game, people will be thinking, well, this has got to stand or fall on its own merits. It can't trade on... Well, it can trade on a little bit of past glories because Blizzard is a well-respected games developer. But beyond that, you know, if it's going to have a really good opener, then the game itself has to be good. If Blizzard made an MMO, you don't think it would be based on Warcraft? Well, that's another thing, Hippie. I mean, that's what I said. You know, there's other things they could easily make it on instead. You know, they could do it on anything. Well, I say on anything. They could. I mean, what are their three main areas are? I suppose is Overwatch now, but I don't think that's MMO material. And of course, it's too new anyway. But Diablo and StarCraft are entirely possible. You could easily do an MMO based on those. Easily. The problem, though, is you can't just stop World of Warcraft just because you're making World of Warcraft 2. This is where I see the main problem with it, because you can keep it secret for a certain amount of time. Although people always know if there's a big project, because they end up hiring a load of staff for it, apart from anything else. But there's a point at which you have to announce what you're doing. But that point is still at least 2 years before it's going to be ready for launch, at least. And at that point, World of Warcraft's still going on. I worry about what World of Warcraft players would do. Are they going to get hyped up for the next expansion? Because there's got to be at least another expansion. Even if they end World of Warcraft at the point they bring out the next MMO, which they don't have to do. You know, there would be the issue of, oh, that means Blizzard are going to stop supporting World of Warcraft. Maybe we should stop playing it now. So they could end up having a dip in revenue. So the launch of the new MMO, if it was a World of Warcraft one, would have to not only be a good launch on its own merit, so to speak. It would have to cover for what might be a loss of revenue from people seeing World of Warcraft as a lame duck. So there's all sorts of ifs and buts. So many of them. I'm sure Blizz will be willing to pay millions to the person who comes up with how to transition one to the other. They could pay me millions to come up with that if they like. I'm pretty good at solving things. If they want to pay me millions for it, they can do. You let them know that I'm available. Without a complete and total revolt. Oh, now that's adding small print to it. How many people would sub to 2 Blizz MMOs? Probably not a lot, if we're honest. Probably not a lot. Maybe you wouldn't have to. Wouldn't necessarily have to. What if they did another modern thing? I'm not saying they should do this, by the way. But let's just say, what if? What if they did another modern thing, which is where it's essentially a free-to-play model. You have to buy the game. You have to buy the expansions when they come out. And there is a subscription model for which you will get perks. But otherwise, it can be done free to play. Now, in that situation, it could be the case that they could say that if you have that a subscription to World of Warcraft covers not pay to win. Under no circumstances pay to win. No one is in favour of that. And I don't believe Blizzard would be either. Perks are not pay to win. Perks are things like the crafting bag type thing. And, you know, and having DLC included in it, right? Or an experience boost. It's not pay to win. But if you had a situation where your World of Warcraft subscription covered both games. So if you had that subscription, it meant you had access to World of Warcraft, but you also had the perks in World of Warcraft 2, or whatever they call it. That might make sense financially, and solves that problem. That indeed, as you say, people are not going to pay subs for both. Pay to win is specifically when you get things that increase the power of your character. You know, that's the definition. Let's keep it at that. Anything cosmetic or, you know, like experience boost for leveling or something like that. Which, you know, they could always as well time gate some of these things. So maybe they don't. But, you know, I mean, what do you get in ESO for your perks? The craft bag, it's worth it for the craft bag if nothing else. But you get your craft bag, which is awesome. It's the best thing in any MMO ever. You get your DLC. You get some coins to spend on the online store, because when you go free to play, you have to have an online store of cosmetic items. Only cosmetic. You get an experience boost. Can't remember. Get other things. The Speaker comic release. Yes, I saw it earlier. It's rubbish. The Speaker comic. Absolute horseshit. That's the second time I've used that phrase tonight. Some games you can buy armor and stuff. I would still say that even if it doesn't have to be the best, if you can buy armor, that's still pay to win. Admittedly, it's not an extreme form where you're buying the best. I mean, it depends what form. Like Star Wars: The Old Republic, you can buy armor, but it's effectively cosmetic because it doesn't have the things that you have to slot into it to actually give you any stats. It's like a shell, so that's really cosmetic. But even if it's not the best gear, if it allows, let's say, a newly deemed character to immediately get into the sort of gear that would normally have to be farmed, which allows them access into content that they couldn't have ordinarily got into, I would still class that as pay to win. You know, if it allows you access into content that you'd ordinarily have to, you know, do other content to get, then I would say that is pay to win. I don't think they should do that. Well, yeah, Star Wars: The Old Republic unplayable if you don't have the sub. I mean, you know, I think sub model is best anyway. It's just that a lot of people will insist on the free-to-play thing. So, that's why you do a half and half. It's like, you can do free-to-play, but if you want to actually play the game properly, you have a sub. And as long as it's comfortable playing it with a sub, I have no issue with that, because I would pay the sub anyway. Where I have an issue, like Lord of the Rings Online, which I'm starting again, because I'm making a video series on that, so I've started leveling a new character. My big issue with the Lord of the Rings Online is it has a similar thing. It's free to play, but also you've got a subscription model, and I have a subscription. But the subscription, although it's worth it, you've still got all the inconveniences. Like, it clogs your bags full of shit. That's the biggest way they get you to buy things in a free-to-play MMO. By clogging your bags full of shit. And when you play Elder Scrolls Online with a sub, that goes away. When you play Star Wars The Old Republic, I think that largely goes away. Actually, it's so long since I played it without a sub, I can't be certain on that. I certainly don't have a problem with clogged bags on Star Wars The Old Republic. But in Lord of the Rings Online, it's terrible trouble. Terrible. In fact, my brand new character has clogged up bags because of all the bloody freebies I've got from the various, I've got my 1 to 8 year gift packages, and I've got various cosmetic stuff that it shoves in my bags. Anyway. Sorry, what have I missed now? Yes, I read it. It's rubbish. I read the second installment of the comic. It's poor. This new Lord of the Rings... I don't think the new Lord of the Rings series... I've put it on Patreon already. My aim is to get a few ahead. They're only short ones, because it's a hell of a grind doing Lord of the Rings Online. And let's say there's some weeks when I can't do more than a few hours, or indeed that at all. So I have to make sure I can do enough in ahead. So for every few hours of gameplay I have, I need to be able to make, let's say, 2 or 3 videos from it. So they're going to be... I mean, the first video is like about 4 minutes. It's really short. But it's just an introduction. Pay to expedite. Depends what you mean. Expedite what? Expediting content? Not a fan of. If it's just shortening leveling time, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with experience boosts. I'm okay with it giving you some free, like, consumables. And I'm okay... Obviously, I'm okay with it giving you some currency to use on the online store. It's more convenience. With the free to play, the sub should give you convenience, because the pay to win, the free to play model, inevitably, in order to get any money out of people, has to make it, and it has to make it just on the edge of enjoyable, but at the same time hugely inconvenient. The game has to be good enough that you want to play it, but it has to be very inconvenient. Because that's how they do it, isn't it? I mean, that's how people made millions from designing those stupid little free mobile phone games, didn't they? You have this mobile phone game, free to play, blah, 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 blah. Then it says, right, you've done this thing. You're going to have to wait 12 hours for it to hatch or grow or whatever before you can do the next thing. Or you can pay $1 and you can unlock it right now. Oh, Mum, can I have $1? Yeah, all right, then if it'll shut you up, and you make millions. But, they shouldn't do that, of course, in an MMO. Nothing in WoW is locked behind a paywall. Well, the game is locked behind a paywall. Depends what you mean. But yeah, Blizzard certainly doesn't have a very pro online store attitude. But that doesn't necessarily mean Blizzard don't. I mean, I trust Blizzard to have some, decorum about the whole thing and not just go on a cash grab. I mean, they're not EA at the end of the day. But managed properly, I don't really see a big problem with free-to-play stroke subscription model. Well, It is. Yeah, the ESO... I mean, the start of Elder Scrolls Online was embarrassing for something that, okay, they wouldn't ever say what the budget was. Its predictions seem to range from anything between 120 to $200 million. But it was shocking when it released on PC at any rate. But I have to take my hat off to them. What they've done since, because they haven't just improved. If they'd have just got rid of all the bugs, you'd have said, well, that's the least you should do. But to actually, and this is something you cannot imagine the World of Warcraft development team doing now, to actually look at the situation and go, do you know what? There's a lot of things here that are bad. We shouldn't just stick to our guns. We should just completely change it. And to do that and make the game way better because of it. Well, it was Safi, it was absolutely appalling at launch here. So, I mean, I stuck it for I stuck it all the way through, not being able to, because you couldn't even go from zone to zone unless you'd completed certain quest lines. And if those quest lines were bugged, that was it. You were stuck. You were stuck in that zone. You couldn't progress. I remember being stuck in... What zone was I stuck in? I don't remember. I think it was one of the Nord zones. And just stuck there. But, you know, he waited a couple of days. And it took a couple of days for some of these bugs to be fixed. And then they fixed it. And I got to end game. And then they did that veteran mode. I thought, oh, anyway. You don't think Blizz will make any game pay to win? But it's not a slap in the face of the customers at all. You just have to manage it properly. You don't do it as a cash grab. You know, you do it sensibly. Because I think a lot of people have negative experiences of it because they've played an EA game or a game that EA grabbed hold of and then killed. Whereas it can be done well. You know someone who will not level 100 to 110 without twin gear. What? Why? The WoW token subscription model works. Well, it does for World of Warcraft. We don't necessarily know it'll work for another game. Yes, indeed, everyone hates EA. EA hates EA. It's like they're self-loathing. But yes, it is the place. I mean, I wonder what happens these days now. So, you know that how the situation goes. You've got a small independent studio. It's had a lot of success with some games, got itself a good reputation. But then, you know, because they're still a fairly small outfit, and I don't know how this works, and they get into financial trouble, and along comes EA and offers to buy your company and help you finish your game and lines you up with other projects as well. I can imagine many years ago people would have gone, oh, great, fantastic. But I think now, if you were such a person and you're thinking, either, like, what would you be thinking? It'd be like, oh, there's these people offering to help us out and we need the cash. But at the same time, we know that they're going to kill our company. But if you don't take it, your company's dead anyway. What a dilemma for some people. But yes, it is. I mean, I can't think of a single... Like, I still think, you know, Star Wars The Old Republic is okay. But if I'm honest, a lot of the reason for that is because I'm only wanting to play it as a single player anyway. And I get to use a lightsaber. You know, if it weren't for those two things... I can't imagine Star Wars The Old Republic would be considered a good game. So I can't really think. The only EA game I can think that doesn't get like proper criticism, and actually the only thing that they haven't properly killed off is the FIFA franchise, the FIFA series. I mean, I haven't bought a FIFA game since FIFA 97, but you know, that seems to go on. They haven't killed that off. I think it's the only thing they haven't killed off. In fact, it was actually quite amusing when Disney came along and told EA to tone down those microtransactions on the Battlefield 2, which of course I gather they've now ramped up again. And it was actually quite amusing to me for EA to come across a bigger shitter than them in Disney, having a hold over them. They do the same terrible things to FIFA, do they? Stockholm syndrome. Well, at least it's going. At least, you know, it's still, they can still keep making new games. People still play them. So they haven't actually killed it off. Oh, well, I can't really say, because I'd say 97 was the last FIFA I got. And it's not like I was getting them each year even then. That was a long time ago. I was still at university then. In fact, I think at that point, I'd only had a PC for about a year or so. So yeah, it's very useful to have a nice bright logo though, which if you see it on any game basically means don't buy it. It's like a government warning symbol, isn't it? Do not buy this game. This could prove hazardous to your wallet. Quite nice of them. Like some games companies have fairly nondescript, you know, logos you could easily miss on some packaging. But theirs is nice and gaudy. Yeah, well that's the thing, Loxley. Disney only cared because they thought it might have a negative impact on the movie. But now that's out of the way, they don't care what they do. Indeed, exactly. I mean, that's what I mean. You know, Disney are bigger shitters than EA. They're just more powerful because they're basically buying up the world at the moment. Do they actually manage to buy Fox yet? Because they were after buying Fox, weren't they? Wow's all right. Well, let me get WoW symbol up. Where are we? WoW's nice and distinctive. But of course, Blizzard is the game logo. Blizzard is fairly low-key because it's quite dark. But the World of Warcraft logo is reasonably distinctive, I think. Where is it? There we go. So that's okay. But it's really the... Oh, I got a Blizzard logo handy. Oh, yes, I have. Which one shall I use? This one's a newer one, I think. I mean, this one's fairly dark, so not as distinctive. Anyway, let's get rid of them. They haven't been allowed to buy Fox. Okay. Comcast put a trump card on. Do you mean a trump card as in after your president, or a trump card, an actual trump card on Fox? But whenever anyone mentions Fox, I don't quite know exactly what they mean there. Do I know why the name Blizzard? No, it's possible we did do, because they didn't start off as Blizzard. They changed the name of their company. Oh, Vivendi are trying to buy games companies up still, are they? But I don't know anyway. But at the same time, we've also gone 12 minutes over there, and we seem to be talking about things that aren't WoW specifically as well. So I'm going to call it a day there. I will just remind people that next week it will be on YouTube, so you have to go to the YouTube channel. I will, of course, if people forget and just come to Twitch, have a thing which I'm going to put up now in a few minutes, something that reminds people to go there as well. But yes, so the next one will be on. But the game streaming, the gameplay streaming will still be on Twitch, because I wouldn't dare stream gameplay on YouTube, because that would be a disaster. I would have my channel banned easily within a week. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do. So thanks very much for watching, and until next time, I will see you later.